Right, evening all. Nice turnout, nice to see you, well done, especially in cold weather like this. There is always some repetition in low carbohydrate education because we've always got to go back a bit for the people who've never heard it before to go forwards. But this is not in any way the detailed discussion about the metabolic or hormonal model of obesity that we talk about when we look at low-carb nutrition in detail as to why it's an issue. I thought I'd spend tonight more talking about what we should eat. Everybody wants to know about cholesterol, and is cholesterol an issue when we're telling people to eat more fat? Because it may be an issue in your mind. I'm going to try and tell you it's not one in your body. And I want to leave some time for questions because I think the one big problem we've had with all the talks over the years, just never really had enough time for questions. In fact, the last talk we gave, the question time went on for longer than the talk itself. So it gives you some idea of how many queries and things that people have. And those of you who've come before, and I'm sure that you've been out and you've been hearing things in the media and you've been reading more, and you may well have more questions. So hopefully we can answer some of those tonight. So we're going to look at low-carb, high-fat nutrition, what to eat, what about cholesterol. It's not a cooking lesson, but hopefully we get something out of all this tonight. Is anyone following a low-carb, high-fat nutrition program in the audience? You must be proud. You must put your hand up. You look like cagey, like when you feel you're in the minority. Look at those hands. Put them up again. Yeah, that's awesome. All right? So, in fact, I don't know why any of you are here unless you think there's a few things to learn. There's always something to learn. I'll tell you that. I learn every single day. I've been writing a book for the best part of the last 9-10 months, which is going to be finished this weekend and maybe published in July on this, and I'm still learning. And every time I think I want to close the last chapter, some bloody idiot writes a journal article and I have to reopen the book and start writing again. At some point in time, you actually have to put the full stop on the last page, is what my copy editor said. Can you just give it to me, please? I keep taking it back, say, no, there's something else that's just come out in the literature. Anyway, I don't think we're ever going to be always up to date in this because it is an evolving paradigm, but I think we've got most of it under control to move forward in the next couple of years. Okay, so those of you who come before, we've seen the slide. Most of the reason we're concerned about the state of world nutrition is the state of world health, as evidenced by a growing epidemic of overly large people. And most of those people are overly large predominantly in the abdomen, belly fat as we call it. Belly fat is a very unhealthy place to have fat. It is very bad for your heart, very bad for all sorts of things. In addition to growing fatness, which has been progressing over the last several millennia, we are also seeing associated with growing fatness, growing diseases of lifestyle. Hand in hand with obesity go diabetes, go coronary artery disease, go hypertension, Alzheimer's, and cancer. They are all related to what the world is doing nutritionally, and they're all related to why we are getting fatter. And many of you have seen this before, and I'm just going to make the point that basically for 2.5 million years, humans were hunter-gatherers eating a predominantly fat and protein diet with very little carbohydrate in it. They only had seasonal exposure to fruit, very little in the way of vegetables, and maybe they chased some bees away to get some honey once in a while. But for 2.5 million years, we did not eat a lot of carbohydrates. That we know for sure. For 10 to 12,000 years, we learned to grow things in the ground. We harvested wild grasses into what became modern-day wheat. And then we started processing it for 200 years. We took wheat from the ground and we put it in a box and called it Weetabix and pretended that that was food. And we continue to do that. And to aid and abet the food industry in feeding us all that stuff, we have been convinced by the public health authorities over the last 35 years to eat a high carbohydrate diet because we must be afraid of fat, because fat surely causes cholesterol and heart disease. And if you look at the greatest change in human shape, thank you, Annie, and the greatest change in human health, it has been in this microcosm of time, 35 to 40 years, is where we've seen the greatest negative changes in human health associated with eating a high carbohydrate diet. We followed these food guidelines for the best part of 35 years to the letter, which said that we should eat 60% of our calories from carbohydrates. Most of the world has been doing that. Most of the world is unhealthy. Certainly the first world. Those of you who've come before have seen this slide. We know that getting fatter is no longer a calorie disorder. It's a disorder of metabolism created by excessive sugar in our diet, which enters our bloodstream, gives us frequent elevated spikes of the hormone insulin, and that cycle causes us metabolically to produce more and more fat, which we store and don't use. We store and don't use. If you keep putting something in a cupboard and you never take anything out, what happens to the cupboard? It becomes full. And the cupboard in the humans, which is so effective, is the one on the front of the abdomen, and not only does it fill, but it expands. It's an expandable storage facility. And if you look around some of your peer group, you'll notice they're doing pretty well in storing things. So carbohydrates, in summary, we're eating too much, and that means we are, in essence, eating too much sugar, because all carbohydrates end up as sugar in the human body. Not all carbohydrates are treated equally in the body. Some spike insulin dramatically, some do not. Just to scare you, 2 Coca-Colas, between the two of them, contain over 20 teaspoons of sugar. So if you think it's difficult to eat or drink lots of sugar, just have 2 Cokes a day. That means you'll eat 70 kilos of sugar a year, which is an enormous amount of it. Carbs and sugar are the most fattening macronutrients in the human diet, and they can be very addictive, especially sugar. And fructose, which you traditionally associate with fruit, but comes in all sucrose, table sugar, and anything that's added to food contains fructose, and we're eating a lot of fructose. So this is our ancestors that were on the previous diagram. They ate a diet of 75% fat, 20% protein, and approximately 5% carbohydrate. We now eat 60% of our calories in carbs. We've been told to cut our fats to 25%, and protein comes along for the ride at about 15 to 20. So we're going to write a new pyramid. This is what it should be looking like. So what to eat on a low-carbohydrate nutrition program says that at the base of the pyramid we are eating mostly animal products, meat, fish, poultry, eggs, highly fibrous vegetables, healthy fats, which I'm going to talk about. You can't read these. Foods in moderation, which are high-fat dairy, nuts, seeds, nut butters, some fruits. And up here it says sensible indulgences like dark chocolate and red wine, which I fully agree with. And you don't see much in the way of other carbohydrate foods in there because they don't belong in there, because they don't belong in the human diet. Carbohydrate is a non-essential nutrient in the human diet. We don't need carbohydrates. Who thinks you need carbohydrates? Put your hands up. If you genuinely believe you need carbohydrates, don't all sit there with your hands down. You're just too scared to put your hand up. So if you think you need carbohydrates, put your hand up. Excellent, thank you. Why do you think you need carbohydrates? Mr. Stubbs, for what? Energy. Thank you. Common answer. We need carbohydrates for energy because carbohydrates become sugar, and sugar is what we use as humans for energy. Is that general understanding? Well, here's the reality. At worst, at most, at best, you might need somewhere between 100 and 200 grams of glucose a day in your body. You might, depending on how you eat. You can make every gram of that from protein. So your liver can convert protein into glucose and make up to 200 grams a day, which will be more than enough to meet your glucose needs should you actually really need much at all. In reality, if you are well adapted to a low-carbohydrate, high-fat diet, you're probably only going to need a little bit of glucose to top up the energy in your brain and a little bit of glucose to feed your red cells and the lens in your eye. And that's it. The rest of your body doesn't want to know about glucose. It doesn't need it. Okay, it might be scary for you to find that out, but it doesn't. Okay. And if you need it, you can make it from protein very effectively and very efficiently in a biochemical conversion or alchemy process called gluconeogenesis. So that's why you don't see lots of carbohydrates on there, because you don't need them. And we believe that carbohydrates are the most fattening and the most contributory to diseases of lifestyle. So I'm going to go through these, so don't worry that it's all small. I'm going to read them out to you. These are basically the 15 rules that govern how and what to eat on a low-carbohydrate nutrition program. And it says, eat mostly real whole foods and where required, cook them from scratch. Eat fat at every meal. Natural fats are your friend. We're going to come to that. Eat non-starchy vegetables and add fat to them. I say there should never be such a thing as a naked vegetable on your plate. A naked vegetable is a vegetable with no fat on it or oil on it. So olive oil and butter are things you should add to your starchy vegetables. Eat when you are hungry, not when you are anxious or stressed or craving. Eat when you are hungry. Stop when you are full. And fast in between. Not snacking in between. Snacking is something invented by the food industry so that you eat more of what they have to offer in little boxes. Eat eggs often, every day if you like. They are not a cholesterol issue. Eat food cooked in healthy, heat-stable fats. Healthy, heat-stable fats are fats that have a very high smoke point. They don't smoke at low cooking temperatures. When you fry at temperatures in excess of 190 degrees. So you want to cook in fats that are stable. Stable fats in heating are coconut oil, butter, extra virgin olive oil. These are your stable cooking oils. Vegetable oils, especially unrefined, will smoke at 70 degrees. Frying takes place at 190 degrees. And lots of nasty things happen in fats if they start smoking when you are cooking. Lots of nasty chemicals are produced in smoking fats, which are very dangerous for your arteries and very causative of cancer. Eat small pinches of salt to all your main meals. I'm going to talk about salt. Salt is particularly good for you. Why are you frowning at me, Mr. Skinner? This is like, it's the reverse of the world you have lived in, and me. I'll talk about it in a minute. Avoid processed foods. Processed foods are foods that come in boxes that have got lots of ingredients. When you pick something out the ground, it is a carrot. When you get a box that says in here there is grated carrot, cinnamon, 15 grams of sugar, 14 grams of flour, 3 apples, 4 raisins, 6 of these, 5 trans fats, and something else, that's a processed food. You shouldn't be eating it. Anything that's got a list of ingredients you shouldn't be eating, by and large. It comes back to eat mostly real whole foods. So don't eat processed foods. If you have to eat something out of a box, read the label and make sure that it's not full of sugar. 600,000 food products that you will find in supermarkets worldwide, 82% of them will have sugar added to whatever box that food is contained in. Everything from gravies to pizza bases, everything has got added sugar in it virtually in the processed world of food. So know how to read food labels, and anything that says there's more than 5 grams of sugar or carbohydrate in that food, you shouldn't be eating it. Avoid snacking. Snacking is not a human requirement. It's a requirement for 2 reasons. One, if you eat a very high carbohydrate diet, you run out of energy every 2 to 3 hours. So you feel hungry in between main meals. And that's not normal. That's why we shouldn't be eating lots of sugar and refined carbohydrate, because it does not satiate or fulfill your energy needs. So snacking can be an issue with respect to a high carbohydrate diet. Secondly, snacking is just something that somebody told us somewhere along the line we must eat 5 times a day, and hunger is something to be afraid of. So we snack continuously in the day in addition to our main meals, and all we do is we provoke frequent spikes of insulin. And if those of you who came to the lecture on metabolism know that the higher and more frequently you have insulin in your bloodstream, the more likely you are to fatten, develop diabetes, and other diseases of lifestyle. We weren't designed to have frequent spikes of insulin. We were designed to have little spikes of insulin in response to what we eat. Then for hours, the insulin must go down into a resting state. If you eat 5 or 6 times a day, you simply have insulin spikes frequently and continue to elevate in the day. So snacking is not required. Avoid sugar or grains, as these, if you're on a low carbohydrate, high fat diet, will stop your fat burning for up to 3 to 5 days. So if on a revised nutrition program, which I'm advocating, you cheat. Cheating is not an accusation, it's an observation. That you decide to go and eat some sugar or grains and refined carbohydrates, then your adapting fat-burning metabolism will literally switch off for between 3 and 5 days. So if you think about the maths of that, if you're being good 5 days a week on a low-carbohydrate, high-fat program and you think you're doing well, then on the weekends you decide, I've been good for 5 days, I'm going to eat this sugary cheesecake, your fat burning will turn off for the next 3 to 5 days, all of which you've now reverted to being good. And then just as your fat burnings come back on, you go, but I've been good for another 5 days, so guess what? I'm just going to have this little sugary treat. And so this is the cycle that you get into if you eat sugars and grains in between your high-fat diet. I don't like the word diet. Nutrition. Avoid overeating beyond feeling full. There's no requirement to do that. Avoid excess protein. What is excess protein? You should have protein with your main meals, but the quantity should never exceed the size and thickness of your palm. So hold up your hand, cut off your fingers and thumb, have a look, and look sideways. That's a protein portion for you. Okay. And you shouldn't eat excessive protein because excessive protein is converted to sugar. And excessive protein spikes insulin. So protein is important, very important as a macronutrient, but there is an excess of protein if you eat too much. So Mr. Franklin, those giant rump steaks on your braai, cut into 4, have one on 4 days. Okay, but you're looking all right. Avoid too many fruits and nuts. So fruits and nuts are part of a low-carbohydrate, high-fat nutrition program, but excessive quantities of them do lead to excessive carbohydrate intake. Fruits and nuts, fruits are all carbohydrate, and nuts have a carbohydrate content in addition to their fat and their protein. Avoid too much fresh dairy if you are trying to lose a lot of weight. If you are trying to lose a lot of weight, fresh milk and fresh cream cheese might spike enough insulin from the lactose, which is a weak sugar, to cause your weight loss a problem. But fresh dairy is not an issue if you are of healthy weight. Avoid alcohol binges. You're all going to laugh at me because that's what everybody does. We all binge. Friday night, tin roof, tonight. It's a good night. Okay, so alcohol binges are large amounts of alcohol in one sitting are not particularly good for metabolism. And alcohol is a very poorly metabolized energy source. So those are what I call the 15 rules of low-carb nutrition. By far and above everything, the greatest health intervention if you're trying to manage weight, or you are a diabetic, or you have cancer, is to cut down your total carbohydrate intake. Now, read that carefully. I didn't say totally cut down your carbohydrate intake. I said we need to cut down our total carbohydrate intake. On a normal diet, a normal high carbohydrate food pyramid recommended diet, people will eat between 300 and 500 grams of carbohydrate a day. When I was an ultra-distance athlete on a high carbohydrate diet, I ate 500 or 600 grams of carbohydrate a day, which I regret now. But I did, because that's what we did. We all did. And we advocated it and we preached it, and I practiced that as a medical doctor. So we know that that's far too much carbohydrate. So we've got to cut down what we eat. What's most important is within what we eat as carbohydrate, we all understand carbohydrates, eh? We're happy with carbohydrates, starches, fiber, sugars, all carbohydrates. We need to cut out sugar, obvious sugar, and added sugar. Obvious sugar, what you put in your coffee. Added sugar, what appears on the box of multi-ingredient processed foods, hidden away sometimes under a multitude of names. And we need to cut down refined carbohydrates. What are refined carbohydrates? I need carbohydrate foods that go through a milling process to strip them down of all their vitamins and minerals and all their fiber, so that maize comes out of off the plant and goes through National Foods and becomes ngwiri. That's refined carbohydrate. Okay. Oats are easy. or oats easier than before, easier, more refined. Quicker to cook, easier to eat, quicker to digest, higher the insulin, fatter you are, greater your diabetes. It's wonderful. Low carbohydrate nutrition is not difficult. People think it is. People think it's boring and somehow deprivation on wheels. It's not. Reducing carbs says cut out the sugar, cut out what I call the white starches, stick to healthier carbohydrates in fibrous vegetables, fruits, and nuts. Small amounts of brown rice, whole grains, sorghum, sweet potatoes, unrefined maize meal, if you are of normal weight and you are not a diabetic, are fine. No one says throw all the carbohydrates in the dustbin. But when you put that brown rice on your plate, there should be a lot of your plate left for the other macronutrients which are more important, as opposed to what we do is rice goes on first and there's not much left on your plate, so you've got to pile stuff on top of it or fit it in a little corner. Okay? So these carbohydrates cannot constitute the bulk of your plate. The 80% difference to health in cutting down carbohydrates is made by cutting out all sugar and refined carbs, okay, the cereals, cakes, biscuits, pastries, sweets, and milk chocolate, which are made with sucrose and grain flours, grain-based flours. And say you can't have cakes and chocolates, but you can't have the ones that are made with lots of sucrose and grain-based flours. All fizzy drinks and fruit juices. Fizzy drinks are probably the greatest invasion of the human diet in the last 20 years. Certainly children are taking in upwards of 30% of their calories in soft drinks currently, all over the world, including this country. Okay, 1 or 2 Coca-Colas, I made the point, or any of those soft drinks, you're talking 10.5 teaspoons of sugar per can. And I mean, if your child said to you, Mum, I'm just going to put 10.5 teaspoons of sugar in my coffee, you'd kind of go freaky. You kind of go, what are you doing? And then you just happily say, well, there's a Coke in the fridge for you. What the hell? All white starches, as I've said. That's the 80% difference. So you can go and look at the big lists in our books. There are big lists about what to eat and what not to eat. They fill up A4 pages. But if you want to make the 80% difference, it just lies in these 3 bullet points. What you need to understand about low carbohydrate programs is there's 3 categories according to the level of carbohydrate restriction, which are applicable to different people who've got different problems. If you reduce your carbohydrate down to about 130 grams of carbohydrate a day, which is substantially less to what I said just now, most people are eating upwards of 200 to 500. That's what we call a reduced carbohydrate diet. It's a low carbohydrate diet by just cutting back from 300 to 140 or 130. And that's absolutely brilliant for people who are healthy, of normal weight, who are not pre-diabetic, who don't have a diabetic history in their family, who are simply trying to make a positive health change by reducing their carbohydrate intake. That's just a mild carbohydrate intake, and you'd achieve that easily by doing what I said on the previous slide. Then there's what we call a true low-carbohydrate, high-fat diet, which we will use therapeutically to encourage people to lose weight, certainly if they need to lose about 6 to 7 kilograms, 5 to 7 kilos. This is where we try and pitch their carbohydrates, somewhere between probably 50 grams and 130 grams of carbs. I'm not asking you to measure it. If you take out the right types of carbohydrates, you get into this range. So this is very good for people trying to lose weight, mild to moderate amounts of weight. Then there is a very low carbohydrate, also called a ketogenic diet, which restricts carbohydrates very low to less than 30 grams a day. This is what we run our type 2 diabetics on, and people who weigh 120 kilos. They need to drastically reduce their carbohydrates in order to move that weight and to treat their diabetes. We're now talking about curing type 2 diabetes with nutrition programs that restrict carbohydrate to 20 to 25 grams a day. We're talking about cure. We have never talked about the cure for diabetes until now. We've talked about managing diabetes and treating blood sugars and maintaining stable blood sugars. We have never talked about curing diabetes. And the tragedy in diabetes is that despite nearly 100 years since we discovered insulin in 1921, of treating diabetics with drugs and insulin, the complication rates in diabetics do not change with treatment. We all get excited because their blood sugars are normal, but they still die of heart disease, still get eye complications, they still get kidney failure at the same rates as before we discovered insulin. And that's a challenge. And it's because when we treat diabetes with drugs, we're treating blood sugars. We treat diabetes with diet, we're treating the disease. Okay. So these are not for everybody. They're very restrictive. They're not that easy. Having said that, that's probably where I am, and I don't try to be there. But it's a very low carbohydrate diet. You're living off what we're going to talk about just now is ketones, which come from the fats in your diet for energy. So that's the carbohydrates for the moment. That's the most important intervention you need to make if you want to improve health, weight, and other diseases of lifestyle. The second intervention, which is critical and must go hand in hand with this, because you can't just take carbohydrates away and not replace them with some source of energy. And our most important source of energy is from fat. So we need to eat more healthy fats. And maybe this will change your paradigm of what are healthy fats, because as far as ladies are concerned, fats are not healthy. Fats are things that make you fat. Fat becomes fat. It's almost a logical thing. Unfortunately, biology is seldom logical. Fats do not make you fat. I'm going to say that again. Fat does not make you fat. Carbohydrates make you fat, because carbohydrates become sugar, which stimulates insulin, which makes you fat. Fats never stimulate insulin, so they can never make you fat, unless you eat them with a lot of refined carbohydrates. Okay, so the only dietary studies that have ever shown that the fat content of a diet is associated with weight gain is where fat intake is associated with high refined carbohydrate intake. And the problem is high refined carbohydrate, not fats. Because when you just eat fat, you become thin, or you stay thin. So what are healthy fats? These are all healthy fats. Okay? All fats from natural sources, be they animal or vegetable, are healthy fats. And I want to say that again. All naturally occurring fats are healthy fats. Okay. So the myths and mythology about animal fats, they're just myths. The fats that are bad fats are the ones that we industrially manufacture. These are all great healthy fats. And you see the man in the middle encouraging you to shovel them in, because they're particularly good for you and you need them for sustainable energy. So whether they be animal or coconut or olive oil or avocado or fishy, they're all healthy sources of fat for the human nutrition. So all naturally occurring fats are healthy. Saturated fats do not cause obesity, and they do not contribute significantly to heart disease, which we're going to look at just now. However, the man-made trans fats and margarines and vegetable oils are very inflammatory and thereby very unhealthy. People who eat high-fat, low-carbohydrate diets note, in most cases, a very effective weight loss, which is sustainable without hunger, and their heart disease risk factors improve significantly, which I'm going to show you. You're looking at me with that funny eye again. Okay, I'm not talking nonsense. And I mentioned this before, the fats that we want to cook in must be stable in heat. And the most stable fats in heat are coconut oil, olive oil, extra virgin, butter. Okay, those are your stable cooking fats. We used to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly with fats, but the reality is only good and ugly. The good fats are all the healthy ones, be they saturated from animal and dairy, be they unsaturated from nuts, olive oils, be they mono or poly, they're all healthy as long as they're not high in omega-6 fatty acids, which all vegetable oils are. So vegetable oils are very high in omega-6 fatty acids. I think I've got a slide to show you that. And oils that are very high in omega-6s are inflammatory, bad for hearts, bad for cancer. And fats that we make in an industrial process to produce margarine, by bombarding them with hydrogen or trans fats that are used to preserve foods on shelving. So a lot of biscuits and cookies are preserved by putting trans fats in them, which allow them to stay alive without going off on the shelf. But trans fats are particularly bad for your arteries and particularly bad for cancer. So the natural fats are all the good ones, and the ugly ones are the one that we've learned to make in a manufacturing process. The energy they get from fat is also very, very efficient. We get 9 calories per gram of energy from fat, which makes it a super fuel. All you clever oaks who came to the last talk, how much is in carbohydrate? The answer is 4. So carbohydrate only gives you 4 grams of energy, 4 calories of energy per gram. It's very poor quality fuel. It's the sort of petrol you put in your car, then you get to Sulu, you need to put some more. You wouldn't buy that for your car. You want petrol you put in a Harare and you get to Bulawayo. Yes? That's a good quality fuel. Fat's a high quality fuel. It gives us lots of energy per gram, which is why people used to think it must be fattening. It's got lots of calories. That's nonsense. We're not abacuses. We are biological systems. We don't just add up calories and when there's too many, we make some fat. We're not like that. We're a biological system. We make fat when the metabolism is towards fat production, and that requires insulin. And insulin's a hormone that is stimulated by sugar. And sugar does not come from fat. It comes from carbohydrates. I'm going to keep going back there so that you understand. Carbohydrates are fattening. So fat's a super fuel. What about protein? Well, protein comes along for the ride in a low-carb, high-fat nutrition program because it always fits in the middle and it'll be a moderate protein intake. And if you're keeping your protein portions to palm size, it will not be a high-protein diet. It was never designed to be a high-protein diet. And one of the criticisms is often leveled at this form of nutrition is that we're advocating a high-protein diet, which we are not. Okay, we're advocating a lower carbohydrate, higher fat intake. Protein comes along for the ride. And there's nothing wrong or unsafe or nutritionally unsound about a high-protein diet, about a moderate protein diet, because you need it to feed your muscles, and you need that protein to make that extra bit of glucose that you might need if you're not getting it from the carbohydrate in your eating. Meat, fish, and dairy are all complete proteins. So vegetarianism is a challenge in any nutrition program, but it's certainly a challenge in low-carb, high-fat nutrition because there's nothing in the vegetable arena that is a complete protein. Did you know that? There are no such thing as a vegetable complete protein, a protein that has all the essential amino acids that the human body requires. You only find complete proteins in animal products. And that's kind of a little bit of a challenge from an evolutionary point of view if you think that we grew up on vegetables and fruits. If we evolved on vegetables and fruits, then where on earth did we get the proteins required for muscle mass development? Where did we get the fat required for your brain? Do you know what your brain's made of? Who thinks it's made of licorice, all sorts? John? Typical engineering answer. Who thinks your brain has any carbohydrate in it? Who thinks there is any structure in your body that is made from carbohydrate? There is not one. There is not one part of your body that is structurally made from any form of carbohydrate. Not starch, not fiber, nor sugar. Our bodies are made from fat and protein. And your brain, which is how I started this side conversation, is 70% fat. So all you girls who think you can get rid of all the fat in your body, bad luck. If you do, you're going to become very stupid. Okay. Right. Who thinks we need fruits and vegetables to get our vitamins and minerals? Who thinks? If the whole lot of you don't think this, I don't know where you've been all your life. Who thinks that we need to eat these to get our vitamins and minerals? Come on, guys. Yeah, you're wrong. Okay, your mother taught you, my mother taught me, your doctor tells you, and my doctor tells me that we get our vitamins and minerals from fruits and vegetables. They are not lying. However, the quantity that we get from fruits and vegetables are minimal. and they are not the essential source of vitamins and minerals. This is where we get the vast majority of our vitamins and minerals from. Animal products. Okay. And in substantially greater quantities. These are vitamins. A, D, E, and K. Can you see that from the back, Paul? These are what we call the fat-soluble vitamins, and the B's and vitamin C are what we call the water-soluble vitamins. Look where we get them from. These are the best sources. So let's just have a wee look. And let's just see how often fruits and vegetables pop out of this chart. Vitamin A, liver, dairy, fish oils. Vitamin D, oily fish, and in the reaction with sunlight on the skin. You can put dairy in there as well. Vitamin E, seeds, nuts, oils, meat. So yeah, a little bit there. K1 and K2. K2, which is essential, we find in animal foods, and we get K1 in avos and green vegetables. Vitamin B1, pork and liver, and some from whole grains. B2, dairy. B3, meat. B5, liver and eggs. B6, meat and fish. B12, animal products only. Animal products only. Vegetarians, watch out. You cannot get B12 on a vegetarian diet. You have to take supplements if you're a pure vegetarian. Biotin, liver and eggs. Folate, liver. Did you get a message there? The best sources of all the vitamins, except for one, at the bottom, we get from animal products. The one that is not so easy to get from animal products is vitamin C. So, unless you eat whales, which the Inuit people of Greenland and the Canadian frozen north do, they get their vitamin C from whale skin. Whale skin has got a high concentration of vitamin C. The rest of us, you probably need to eat a couple of citrus fruits every now and again to get some vitamin C. But the other interesting thing we know about humans is that when you eat a high carbohydrate diet, for various reasons that I haven't got time to go into, physiologically your requirement for vitamin C goes up substantially. So if you're eating a high carb diet, and especially if there's a lot of refined carbohydrates, you need a lot more vitamin C. And if you eat a lot less carbohydrates and a lot less refined carbohydrates, your vitamin C requirement drops dramatically. You don't need as much. How's that for interesting nutrition science? So C, I'm trying to grow a whale in my fish pond, but anyway, unsuccessful. Right, what about minerals? So these are some of the most important minerals: calcium, iron, chromium, iodine, selenium, zinc, magnesium, manganese, and potassium. And once again, where do we get them from? What are the best sources? Calcium, dairy, tinned fish, eggs, animal products. Iron, red meat, liver, fish, shellfish, animal products. You can get them from dark green vegetables. Chromium, eggs, beef, cheese, liver, iodine, fish, kelp, selenium, organ meats, which means liver, brain, kidney, fish, shellfish, zinc, oysters, liver, meat, cheese, fish, magnesium, and manganese, nuts and whole grains. I'll give you those. Potassium, animal products, and also fruits and veggies. Take home message, ladies and gentlemen. We don't essentially require fruits and vegetables to get the vast majority of our vitamins and minerals. We get substantially greater amounts in and from animal products. Okay, so kind of this nutritional myth that these are so essential because of the vitamin and mineral content in terms of fruits and veggies is not true, which is very interesting. You can't see this too clearly, but the reason I put it up, it's actually from my book. And it's a very interesting chart, and it says, this is a nutrient. I'll just show you some examples. A nutrient, this is processed food, sugar, and flour compared to real foods. And the selection of real foods in a basket are eggs and oats and sardines and eggs and liver and spinach and dairy and the kind of things that I eat a lot. Okay, so mostly low carb, high fat. That's what's in this basket. So let's just take something. I just want to show you a couple of examples. All right, I talked about vitamin B12. The content in the processed food, sugar, and flour is 0. There are 1,125 units of vitamin B12 in liver and eggs, liver and sardines. Let's take another example. Vitamin B3, niacin. There are 14 units in this processed food with sugar and flour. There are 200 units in liver and eggs. Vitamin A, there is 0 in processed food, sugar and flour. There are 1,400 units in liver and spinach. Do you get the message? What's the message? Animal products provide us with the vast majority of the nutrients that we require, especially the micronutrients in food. So the best sources of most micronutrients are animal foods. Vegans face challenges in obtaining specific micronutrients, especially B12. There's very little evidence to support, from a nutritional science point of view, a requirement for large amounts of vegetables or fruit to obtain these vitamins and minerals. So maybe that's kind of changed your perspective a little bit. Salt. Salt's a jolly good thing. Salt has been wrongfully demonized for years, associated with the evolution of high blood pressure, blamed as a causative factor in high blood pressure. But in reality, the science that substantiates that is very, very poor. If you eat a high salt diet, the most that your blood pressure will probably go up is about 3 to 5 millimeters of mercury, between 3 and 5. All right? That's not a huge amount. If I put you on a low salt diet, your blood pressure will come down roughly about 3 millimeters of mercury. So in terms of being this evil white death, its actual measured effect on blood pressure is relatively small. That's point number 1. So it's not quite the problem it has been made out to be. 2, salt impacting on blood pressure is only a feature in individuals eating a high carbohydrate diet. If you eat a high carbohydrate diet, a number of physiological variables are introduced into your body, one of which is that you retain salt and water at the level of the kidneys. So you are more salt retaining on a high carbohydrate diet, and exactly the opposite on a low carbohydrate diet. You excrete salt. You lose it from the body, and therefore your requirement for salt on low carbohydrate goes up. That's why on my 15 rules, it said add a pinch of salt to your main meals daily, because you actually need it. If you eat a low carbohydrate diet for 3 weeks and you don't add salt, you start feeling very dizzy and not well, because you become salt depleted. Okay, unless you're eating very salty foods. If you eat biltong 8 times a day like I do, then you're getting some in your biltong. Okay, Mr. Stubbs, you chuffed to that. Hey, it's all good news, eh? What about sweetness? Okay, so the point about this is sugar is very bad for you, but some people have a sweet tooth and might even have cravings in the first couple of weeks. So sweeteners are okay as long as they are natural sweeteners, and the 2 most common natural sweeteners that are the most used are stevia, which comes from some Amazonian plant, and xylitol, which is a sugar alcohol. There's also a relative of xylitol called erythritol. These are fine. But artificially manufactured sweeteners, the saccharins, the aspartames, the ASKs, these are not healthy. Okay, they are not healthy. So artificial or non-sugar sweeteners in this respect, no problem. I'm not advocating swapping 10 teaspoons of sugar in your coffee for 10 teaspoons of xylitol. Xylitol is a particularly effective laxative, so you won't have any problems with constipation if you put 10 teaspoons in your coffee. But these are very reasonable to use. They have no or minimal effect on insulin, and it means that you can explore the full range of baking using nut-based flours, almond flours, coconut flours for baking, and you can use these for the sweetening. So there's no requirement to have a deprivation diet without treats and sugary desserts, but they're not sucrosy desserts. They sweeten desserts with xylitol. There's another area of foods that are becoming increasingly important, and these are foods that reduce the glycemic index, which is the insulin response to any carbohydrate in your food. And these are acidic foods like vinegar, fermented foods like fermented soy, fermented dairy, pickled foods, and high fiber foods. These are now increasingly being considered what is called the nutritional antidotes to insulin. So if you include acidic foods, fermented foods, and highly fibered foods, they have a positive effect on insulin from any carbohydrate that's coming in through your intestine. So these are good things. They're also very good for what's a growing area of science is what bacteria do you have in your intestine? And it's been shown, and this is a very big area of modern research, is the exploration of the intestinal bacterial flora, because it has a major impact on how we process carbohydrates, how we digest other foods, our predisposition to bowel disorders. And these fermented, pickled, acidic foods are very pro-healthy gut bacteria. So if you want to go and read interesting things, go and read about the gut biome, which is the gut bacterial universe. So one of the reasons I had to reopen the book and start writing, because there's been some awesome articles recently about the gut biome. Right, so I have everything I've said about cutting your carbs and eating all this fat going to make you have a heart attack. Mr. Skinner, you worried about that, eh? Okay. He's nodding at me. He's genuinely worried. Okay, so let's have a quick look at cholesterol. So is cholesterol really that bad? Well, the first distinction we have to make is this one. The distinction between dietary cholesterol, cholesterol that's in food that we eat, and the cholesterol that we measure in your blood. They are not the same thing. And that does not influence that. So I'm not saying that having very high blood cholesterol is okay. I'm going to come to that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that dietary cholesterol is okay. It does not make a difference. And in 2015, this year, at the end of the year, when the new World Food Guidelines come out, I can tell you with 100% surety that dietary cholesterol is being removed as a risk factor for heart disease. Okay, it's coming out in December. It's already been announced by the American Academy of Nutritional Sciences, who are the major review board for this. It's been announced, but it will be included in the guidelines in December. So what I'm telling you now in December will be what everyone pray. Your GP, if he's up to date in December, will know this too. Okay, so dietary cholesterol is not the issue. Blood cholesterol may be the issue. That's the first important thing. So eggies, eat as many as you like. They don't affect your serum cholesterol. They don't impact on your risk for heart disease at all. If they are pasture fed. Okay, if they are grain-fed eggs, there may be an issue because grain-fed eggs have more omega-6s in them than free-range eggs, but that's another issue. So if you're going to eat meat and you're going to eat eggs, you want to eat as much pasture, free-range, grass-fed as you can find. That creates a healthier foodstuff, and it's to do with omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids. The more pasture-fed and grain-fed your chickens, which produce the eggs, and your cows, which produce the meat, and your pigs, which produce pork, the more free-range they are, the healthier their products. Anyway, back to cholesterol. So the first thing about cholesterol is this terrible killer that we've all been led to believe is absolutely essential to life. 90% of it is found in all the cells of the body. So all your cells are made of cholesterol. Your brain's got an enormous amount of cholesterol. All your nerves are made of cholesterol and fat. Your brain actually has 25% of your total body cholesterol. We make cholesterol into bile so that we can absorb fat, which we excrete in our gallbladders. And that's a really interesting thing. Who's had gallstones? Yeah. Who knows someone who's had gallbladder disease or the gallbladder out? Yeah. So you know what we now know about gallbladder disease and gallstones is it related to a high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet. Because when you eat a low-fat diet, you don't excrete the bile from your gallbladder, which is what it's supposed to do. So it sits there. And as it sits, it dries. And calcium comes out of solution, and you form gallstones, and you get gallbladder inflammation and cholecystitis, and eventually you need your gallbladder out. So gallbladder disease is a direct result of high-carbohydrate, low-fat diets, which we've been told to eat for the last 40 years. So gallbladder disease is a disease of lifestyle. It's related to carbohydrate. Interesting, eh? Because we make cholesterol into bile to excrete bile to absorb fat. We don't do that. We block the gallbladder up. We use cholesterol to make all our hormones, estrogen, progesterone if you're a girl, testosterone if you're a boy and a girl. Some girls have more testosterone than others. Vitamin D is made from cholesterol. When sunlight hits your skin, you convert cholesterol into vitamin D, and vitamin D acts like a hormone in the body. All of our cells, all the membranes of cells, when we repair damaged cells, we repair them with this wonderful, magical, absolutely life-essential substance called cholesterol. Terrible thing, eh? That someone would give us this stuff to kill us. It's bizarre. So, I was talking about dietary cholesterol. We don't absorb it very well anyway. It contributes very little and marginally to any measured serum cholesterol. No longer is an issue. What is an issue is what happens in our liver with cholesterol. When you measure a blood cholesterol, any figure that you're looking at, 80% of that figure has come from what the liver has produced. Our liver makes cholesterol. So does every cell in our human body. So the production of cholesterol is what contributes to elevated cholesterol. And then there are people with a genetic disorder called familial hypercholesterolemia. They have cholesterol levels that are 3 to 5 times normal. Not only do they overproduce, but they can't absorb it back into the liver when they need to reduce the level. Our liver can produce and absorb. Produce, absorb. Produce, absorb. Maintain our cholesterol levels. Okay, there's a check and balance system. A forward and a feed forward, a feedback system. So if we've got elevated cholesterol, most of it has come because we are overproducing it, and in people with some genetic disorders, they can't absorb it back, so they are stuck with a high cholesterol. So that's where our cholesterol comes from. So what about the relationship between cholesterol and saturated fat? Are they the same thing? Well, if you're a chemist or a biochemist, these are the molecular arrangements of cholesterol and saturated fat, and I would challenge you to tell me that they look anything like the same. They are drastically different. Fats are fats and cholesterol is cholesterol. Cholesterol is actually a steroid. It's got a steroid ring. Fat's got nothing to do with steroids. So they're not related biochemically at all. Cholesterol is a sterol, it is not a fat. However, they share common dietary sources. We know that. You get them from similar foodstuffs because they're in the same foodstuffs. I told you that we use cholesterol excreted in our bile in order to absorb fat. If you don't have bile, you can't absorb fat. These are both lipids. What are lipids? Lipids are substances that don't dissolve in water or plasma. So cholesterol or fat can't just float around in your bloodstream. You've all seen fat when you wash the pan. Where does the fat go? It floats on top of the water. So fat can't travel in your bloodstream because it doesn't dissolve, nor can cholesterol. Therefore, they have to share a transport system in your bloodstream to get where they need to go. And that transport system is called a lipoprotein transport system. This is a lipoprotein. It's like a ball, and the cholesterol and fat is contained inside. This ball is mostly made of protein and phospholipids. So these are taxis. And inside that taxi, you will find both cholesterol and fat. Fat is called triglycerides. Once it gets into the body, it's called a triglyceride. Are we happy with that? So they have a relationship, but they're not the same thing. There are different types of lipoproteins. The ones that most people know, one is called LDL, or low-density lipoprotein, codenamed bad cholesterol. And then HDL, which is high-density lipoprotein, codenamed good cholesterol. Okay? That's a taxi, all right? You understand taxis. So cholesterol and fat jump onto the same taxi to get where they're going. They share the taxis. The good cholesterol taxis and the bad cholesterol taxis, they're both in the taxis. When your doctor sends you for a cholesterol test, you'll get a report back. And the report that they pay attention to by and large generally is just your total cholesterol. And if it's up, then they start giving you a lecture about the risk of heart disease. Correct? Correct? And they'll also say, well, in your total cholesterol, your bad cholesterol, which is not really cholesterol, it's actually your lipoprotein taxi count, which contains cholesterol, is up. So that means the same thing. So these are up. So let's have a chat about heart disease, and let's have a chat about statins, and here's your prescription, and go and have a nice day. Well, is that the whole story? Well, the answer is no, it's not. In fact, it's such a gross oversimplification, it's drastically inaccurate and very misleading. If you really want to look at a cholesterol profile, you need to know these things. If your total cholesterol is massively elevated, like 2.5 to 3 to 5 times normal, and you're a man under 50 years of age, which says you have a genetic problem, yeah, we accept the fact that you might get premature heart disease. But there are reasons beyond cholesterol that you're going to get that heart disease. But this is a marker that you have a genetic problem and a genetic predisposition to early onset heart disease. If you're not under 50 years of age and your cholesterol is a little bit up, we go and look at that low-density lipoprotein, so-called codename bad cholesterol. If the size of the particles are very small and there's lots of them, it's a very dense concentration, that increases your heart risk. I'll show you what I mean in a moment. This is what I mean. If we drive on the Borrowdale Road, and that is the traffic stream with those sort of taxis, small and dense, that's very dangerous. Would you agree? It's very dangerous. Okay. So we don't like that pattern. However, if the LDL lipoprotein taxi carrying your cholesterol is large, and there's only one every 2 hours on the Borrowdale Road, that is not a high risk, is it? It is also not a risk for your heart or your arteries. If your cholesterol is contained in big luxury LDL, large, small numbers, it's not a risk. So you see there's more to it than just a number. Okay, there's much more to it than just a number. In addition to that, we need to know what your good cholesterol is doing. Your high-density lipoprotein containing cholesterol, if that is very low, that's a risk for heart disease. So it's not good to have lots of small, dense LDL, and it's not good to have low HDL. And if we look at your blood fats, if they are elevated significantly, that's a risk for heart disease. So if you look at the global risk for heart disease with respect to cholesterol and lipids, it's about looking at that whole profile, not just the total. The total means very little. And in fact, after the age of 50, your total cholesterol means nothing. There is no association between elevated cholesterol after the age of 50 in a man and heart disease. There is no association whatsoever in women at any age with elevated cholesterol and heart disease. None. All the studies that were done that associated elevated cholesterol with heart disease were done on men, and women were just included in the extrapolation of conclusion. All the studies that have recently been done on women have shown that women can live with cholesterols of 7, 7.5, and they live much longer than women with cholesterols of 5. So if you're a woman on a statin, I would have a conversation. I'm not saying anymore. Don't go fight with your doctor. I said you should have a conversation. Let's look at the effect of diet on your cholesterol levels. If you eat a high carbohydrate diet, high in carbs, high in refined carbs, high in sugar, let's look at this. Your cholesterol might go down a bit, but if it does go down, it's not very much, and it doesn't mean much to your heart disease risk. You remember those dangerous taxis? That's what happens to them. They increase dramatically. So high refined carbohydrate, high sugar diet produces lots of small, dense, low density lipoprotein, bad cholesterol. That increases your risk of heart disease. Your good cholesterol goes down. That increases your risk of heart disease. The fat in your blood goes up. Guess what happens when you eat a high carbohydrate diet to your risk of heart disease? Do you see those arrows? They are up. And no one will dispute this. This is accepted in any textbook of medicine as we speak today. So you get lots of those. Where do you get the triglycerides from? How do you form these fats? Well, a triglyceride is 3 fatty acids attached to a backbone of something called glycerol. Glycerol is obtained from the metabolism of sugar. We make triglycerides from sugar. We send sugar into our liver, and sugar is converted to glycerol, and then the liver attaches fatty acids to them, and we make triglycerides predominantly as a result of the carbohydrate in our diet under the influence of insulin. In case you were wondering how sugar became fat. If you come to the metabolic lecture, you understand that. What if we eat a low carbohydrate, higher fat nutrition? What happens to this whole profile? Well, you'll probably see already the arrows are very clear. Our total cholesterol, I'll talk about that. It might go up a bit. It might come down. Doesn't really make a big difference to heart risk, as we know at the moment. The small, dense taxis, they tend to go away and become large and fluffy. Our good cholesterol goes up, often quite dramatically, and the fats in our blood go down, all of which mean on a low-carb, high-fat diet, the predictive risk factors for heart disease go down. Okay, we get lots of nice big buses and lots less taxis. This chart is simply here to show you this. This is the change in health biomarkers for heart disease on a high-fat, low-carb diet. All you want to see is that anything that is going yellow and far is good for you. Can you see yellow and far is good for you? Okay, that means that the bad risk factor is going down substantially. So you'll notice that triglycerides go down a lot on a low carbohydrate diet. Okay, they don't go down that much on a low fat diet. The HDL, our good cholesterol, is going up. Where is it? Can anyone see it there? I can't see it. There it is there. It's gone up on our low carbohydrate diet. It hasn't gone up on our low fat diet. So everything yellow going down is all low carbohydrate, high fat. All the major risk factors are going down. You'll see they go down substantially more than they do on a low fat diet, which is the red color. Okay. So take a message from the slide. If you look at the risk factors for heart disease, they are changed much more positively by a low carbohydrate, high fat diet compared to a low fat, high carb diet. Just look at the colors. Don't worry about the details. So the recent conclusions about cholesterol and heart disease are the following. Cholesterol is essential to life. It's not a serial killer. Okay? Serial killers are contained in boxes called Rice Krispies, Weetabix. Those are serial killers. Okay? Dietary saturated fat and cholesterol do not significantly affect cholesterol levels. This is dietary. That's what I'm telling you is coming out at the end of the year. We know that now. We knew it before. No one listened. Cholesterol is associated with, but a very weak predictor of future heart disease. A very weak predictor. Compared to diabetes and smoking, it hardly comes close. Diabetes and smoking double your risk of having a heart attack. As you get older, that increases your risk of having a heart attack. Cholesterol as a risk predictor comes down. If smoking and sugar are up here, cholesterol is somewhere near the floor as a predictor of risk. Okay, doesn't come close. It's not a heart disease risk factor in women, and it is insignificant in men over 50 years of age. Arterial inflammation is probably the most important factor in coronary disease. The most inflammation is caused by carbohydrates, trans fats, and vegetable oils. These are the things that damage our arteries. There have been a few studies now on people eating low-carb, high-fat nutrition for fair periods of time and what happens to cholesterol. And this is the results that we know to date. The vast majority of people, 70% of people, see no change in their total cholesterol levels. So we're not stressed by that. A few people, about 20%, will see short-term changes in their total cholesterol, go up maybe about 30%, and then after about 6 to 8 weeks, that cholesterol comes down again. And it's thought to be release of cholesterol from the fat stores as they open up for energy. So that's not a problem. So we don't panic when we see a little blip. We just wait and check it in 3 months' time, and in most people, the cholesterols come down. In addition, there are very positive heart-healthy changes. Triglycerides go down dramatically, and HDL increases substantially. Remember, HDL is the good cholesterol. It goes up substantially on a high-fat diet. Mine went up by 2.5 times. That is never achievable with any medication. It's never been achieved with any medication. Okay? So one nutritional intervention sees good cholesterol go up dramatically, which has to compensate for any elevation in total anyway. There are a few, and we have seen a few, whose cholesterols have gone up significantly and they have stayed up beyond 3 months. This is definitely an outlier response. It identifies a small group of people who have an abnormal response to the nutritional change. The implications for which we are not sure. We don't know. There are no 10 or 20-year trials. Should we be worrying about these people? We don't really know. So we're looking at them at an individual level. There is a guy called Thomas Dayspring in America, a lipidologist who's following it, and he will be the first to say we don't know what the impact is. We are doing 3 things with them. If it's not that bad, they're not that old, and they don't have any other risk factors, we're telling them to press on unless they want to change. If it's very high and they've got other risk factors, we do one of 2 things. We change their nutrition a bit. We bring back a little bit of whole grain carbohydrate, and we reduce their saturated fat. And interestingly, their cholesterol goes down. So we can manipulate their diet. But understand, these are not normal people. They're abnormal. Something different about them. And the other one is that we're really worried about them if they're very high risk and they don't want to change the nutrition, or we don't see them, we might put them on a low-dose statin because they are abnormal. And we don't know if their cholesterols are sort of 13 or 14. Yeah, that might be an issue in the future. We just don't know. But I want to just assure you and reassure you that these are rarities. This is what happens with most people. Nothing happens. It's not a drama. Eating 3, 6, 8 eggs a day. There's no dramatic effect. We know diet doesn't affect it anyway. Okay, so this big hoo-ha about cholesterol is an overrated, overexcited, exaggerated fear of doctors and patients based on historical fears and historical myths. So to finish off, this is the growing list of medical conditions that are increasingly being exposed to low-carb, high-fat nutrition with positive results. And it grows by the week. Sleep apnea has just come on. Certainly for overweight and obesity, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, hypertension, coronary heart disease, as an intervention in cancer and Alzheimer's and childhood epilepsy, it's a no-brainer. We use it all the time, highly successful. Okay, but more and more these ones are coming in as well. ADHD, you're going to read lots more about kids. Most kids are not actually ADHD. They just drink too much Coke and food colorings and flavorings, which drive them a bit crazy. Okay. And why we want to put all these kids who are nutritionally compromised onto Ritalin just escapes me. I said to you, I eat this every day. I don't eat some deprived monk-like diet. Okay? There's bread and there's cheesecake and there's smoothies and there's crackers. Do you like my cartoon? I like my cartoon. And there's chocolate-coated coconut bars and there's pizza and there's carb-free pizza. There's Banting pizzas at Sorella's tonight if you want to go there for supper next door. Best pizza house in the whole. How much did you pay me for this ad? $20. I forgot the rest of the spiel. Yeah, okay. But just to give you an idea, this is low carbohydrate, high fat nutrition. It's wonderful stuff. It's easy to do. We swap grain flours for nut and coconut flours. We swap margarine for butter. Okay. It's easy to do. We stick to our most fibrous vegetables, our cauliflowers and our broccolis. We still have those. I have cheese on my broccoli. We make low-carb pasta from what's that thing? Cauliflower. We make pizza bases from cauliflower. We make mashed potato from cauliflower. We make cauli mash. We make rice from cauliflower. It's an incredibly useful vegetable in a low-carb environment. Here's some lacto. Lacto is about the best thing you can eat. If you don't want to eat lacto, make it into cream cheese. Makes the best and cheapest, cost-effective cream cheese in the country. And I shouldn't share that secret with you. If there's a lactose shortage, I won't say it again. Okay. So all of these things give you an idea. There's low-carb bread. There's a multitude of low-carbohydrate bread recipes. My daughter makes it in 20 seconds in the microwave in the morning. 20 seconds, we have bread on the table if we need it. We make low-carbohydrate ice cream. We've just bought an ice cream maker. We churn out low-carb ice cream every second night. It's made from milk and cream or coconut cream. Some of the recipes have eggs, but we make ice cream. But it's not got sugar in it. Okay, so I'm very happy to take some questions. Those of you who got to go to Tin Roof, please go. But I'm very happy to address any questions you might have. But if you wish to go, please don't stay. If you need to go, great. You're showing me. Oh, Linda's just waving at me. Linda Anstey runs our low carbohydrate nutrition program, which is called Weight-Lite. So if you want to talk, if you've got problems or people who've got problems, obesity, diabetes, talk to her. She runs a clinical program we have here at Rolf Sports Medicine. Questions? Was that interesting for those of you who came here as doubting Thomases? Please come to the metabolic lecture, the one that's just about the science of low-carb nutrition, because it'll fill in some of the gaps. I could not give that lecture tonight. That's an hour on its own. Really wanted to go more into the foodie stuff and the cholesterol, which I've been hounded day and night to talk about. I want to address those issues tonight.